In 1884, visitors to the Paris Salon would approach this portrait and begin to curse. Not in silence, out loud. Accounts from the time say that, standing in front of the canvas, one could hear, immoral, indecent, repulsive. One critic wrote that the painter had fallen below what is acceptable. Another claimed the woman looked like an elegant corpse put on public display, not because she was nude, but because she appeared available. Look at the painting. See the black dress clinging to her body. See the violent contrast between the dark background and that skin, almost too pale. Now, lower your gaze to the detail that detonated everything, the dress strap. In the original version, it slipped off her shoulder, 1 centimeter out of place. A minimal flaw, but enough to destroy an entire reputation, because that woman was not an actress. She was not a courtesan. She was a wife, and the wedding ring is right there gleaming on her finger. In that room, in 1884, the question was not whether the painting was beautiful. The question was, how did a married woman dare to look so comfortable inside her own skin? In the month that followed, she vanished from society. The painter fled the country, and the portrait became synonymous with scandal. Today, it is considered a masterpiece, but at the time, people said that image should never have been shown at all. And that raises an even more unsettling question. How did a single portrait manage to destroy the life of the woman who posed for it, without showing anything that wasn't already in plain sight? By the late 19th century, there was a silent agreement between art and society. Painting could suggest, it could idealize, it could even flirt with desire. But it could never expose too much. The female body, when it appeared, had to be domesticated, turned into myth, into allegory, into something distant enough to not feel real. Respectable women were not portrayed as present, and certainly not as comfortable within their own bodies. Acceptable sensuality was always indirect, disguised as ancient history, protected by symbolic veils. Anything outside that boundary was seen as a moral threat. Paris at the time was not just the capital of art, it was the capital of social surveillance. Everyone watched everyone else, and a visual misstep could cost more than a financial one. It was in this environment that John Singer Sargent decided to risk everything. He was not a marginal painter, nor a desperate provocateur. He was young, gifted, cosmopolitan, an American expatriate, perfectly integrated into Parisian salons. His ambition was clear: to establish himself as the great portraitist of the European elite. The Paris Salon was the decisive stage. Those who triumphed there won the game. Those who failed disappeared. Sargent needed an image that would command attention, something impossible to ignore, something that would separate his name from the crowd of competent painters. And then he chose the wrong face, the wrong body, the wrong woman, not out of cheap scandal, but because he believed that beauty, when treated honestly, would be enough. He gambled that the world was ready. It wasn't. And when the portrait was revealed, it wasn't technique that went on trial. It was morality. When the portrait finally appears at the salon, it doesn't shout. It stares back. The first thing that draws attention is not the face, it's the contrast. Look at the background. A deep brown, almost suffocating, with no detail, no landscape, no escape. Now look at her. The skin is too pale. Not pale like idealized porcelain. pale like something that has spent too long away from the sun, almost artificial. Critics at the time said that tone resembled a body without circulation. Others whispered that she must ingest substances to maintain such unnatural pallor. The dress is black, tight, heavy. There are no romantic laces, no distractions. The fabric outlines the body without asking permission. The waist is defined. The bust is direct. The neckline does not beg for attention. It simply exists. And then there is the posture. She is not seated demurely. She is not leaning in submission. She braces herself firmly against the table, taking up space. The body faces forward. But the face turns slightly to the side, present and distant. That pose was anything but innocent. And now, the detail that turns tension into threat. In the original version, the right strap of the dress slips off her shoulder. It doesn't fall. It doesn't collapse. It slips. A minimal gesture, but devastating. Because on that same arm leading down to the hand, there is another detail impossible to ignore. The ring. A wedding ring. Clear, visible, cold. The visual message was unbearable for Paris in 1884. A married woman, comfortable in her own body, without shame, without apology, without a moral narrative to protect her. But this was not just a woman. It was Virginie Gautreau, an American born in Louisiana, daughter of a family marked by the Civil War, raised amid displacement, loss, and ambition. After her father's death, she arrives in Paris not as a legitimate heir to the elite, but as someone trying to enter it. Virginie was not born at the center of the system. She orbited it. She was an outsider in a world obsessed with pedigree. In Paris, she became famous not for titles, but for presence, for the way she walked, for how she used her body as social capital. Artists watched her the way one watches something dangerous, desirable but never fully acceptable. She marries a much older banker, gains stability, but never belonging. And that is what the portrait shows. Not a docile wife, not a mythological muse, but a real woman too visible, trapped between status and desire. Sargent did not try to soften this. He amplified it. He painted Virginie as she existed in whispers, not as society demanded she appear in public. And there, on that canvas, everything became explicit. Not because it showed too much, but because it hid too little. The scandal had not yet exploded, but it was already fully armed. And in the next part, the question stops being aesthetic and becomes moral. What exactly was this image saying that Paris could not allow to be said out loud? So take a moment now, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that this kind of investigation deserves to keep existing. And if you want more stories where art is not decorative but dangerous, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay tuned for what comes next. Here, the frame is never the problem. The problem is what's behind it. The problem was never the amount of skin. Paris had seen enough nude bodies to avoid pretending shock. The problem was who was wearing that body and how it was being presented. Virginie Gautreau was not a mythological figure. She was not a nymph. She was not a goddess borrowed from antiquity to justify desire. She was a living woman, married, known, recognizable, and that changes everything. Society accepted sensuality as long as it came disguised, as long as it was protected by symbolic distance. Here there was no disguise. The dress did not tell an ancient story. The pose did not ask for erudite interpretation. The background offered no narrative escape. Everything was happening now, and the wedding ring ensured that no one could pretend they didn't understand. The expectation was clear. Portraits of women from high society were meant to serve a function, to confirm respectability, to neutralize desire, to turn presence into ornament. What Sargent delivered was the opposite. He did not soften the body. He did not lower the model's gaze. He did not create emotional distance. She does not look shy. She does not look submissive. She does not look sorry for taking up space. She looks comfortable. And that was unacceptable. Because a married woman, comfortable in her own body, with no husband in sight, no children as a visual alibi, no sign of moral restraint, was not seen as elegant. She was seen as a threat. The reaction was immediate. Critics did not discuss brushwork. They did not debate composition. They attacked character. They called the pose absurd, the pallor unhealthy, the elegance artificial. There were rumors about excessive makeup, whispers about improper habits, insinuations about her private life. None of this needed to be proven. The painting had already done the dirty work. The desperation was so intense that Sargent tried to erase the past. He took the painting back to his studio and, with a trembling brush, repainted the fallen strap, placing it back on her shoulder. He tried to dress the woman he had undressed. But fresh paint does not erase public memory. The portrait began to function as visual evidence of something society wanted to punish but could never prove. And there lies the true taboo that was broken. Sargent did not paint a scandal. He removed the symbolic protection that had always separated respectable women from desirable women. He placed both things in the same body, without apology. For Virginie, this was devastating. What was meant to solidify her social position did the exact opposite. Invitations stopped arriving. Doors closed. Friendships disappeared. She was never judged in a court of law. There was no formal accusation. But the sentence was collective. Paris decided that this woman had shown too much, even though she showed nothing beyond what had always been there. The painting did not reveal a secret. It revealed a contradiction. And society responded in the only way it knew how: by erasing the woman who embodied it. In the next part, this punishment stops being symbolic and becomes concrete, because the portrait did not destroy only her reputation. It also cost everything to the man who dared to paint her this way. After the Paris Salon of 1884, there was no room for nuance. There was no public defense, no reassessment, no second chance. The painting was taken off the wall, but the damage never left the city. For Virginie Gautreau, the punishment was immediate and silent. Invitations stopped arriving. Salons closed their doors. Friends crossed the street to avoid greeting her. She was not accused of anything concrete. There was no proof, no formal scandal. But Paris had already decided. That woman had been seen in a way that could not be undone. And in a society where reputation was capital, being seen was enough to lose everything. Virginie did not fall for something she did. She fell for something that seemed possible. The portrait began to function as a permanent visual certificate. Whenever someone thought of her, they thought of that image. Whenever the image appeared, the judgment came with it. She was not banned by law. She was banned by consensus. For John Singer Sargent, the blow was different, but no less deep. He tried to resist. He tried to explain. He tried to correct it. Nothing worked. Critics treated him as an accomplice. The painter of an improper woman. The man who dared to put on display what was meant to remain controlled. Commissions dried up. The atmosphere in Paris became suffocating. And then came the decision that sealed everything. Sargent left the city, not as a misunderstood artist searching for new horizons, but as someone who understood that, at that moment, his name was too stained to survive there. He moved to England, started over, rebuilt his career cautiously, painted again, was celebrated again, but he never took that kind of risk again, never delivered a portrait so direct, so tense, so dangerous. Madame X became a ghost, kept in the studio, turned toward the wall, silent. For decades, no one spoke of it out loud. Virginie continued living on the margins of the society she had tried to conquer. Separated from her husband, distant from the social center, reduced to rumors. She died in 1915, far from the salons that had once desired her. Sargent, years later, already consecrated, sold the painting to an American museum. But he imposed one condition: that her name be concealed. As if, even in the end, that image was still too dangerous to carry a real identity. When he handed over the canvas, the old artist confessed, "I suppose it is the best thing I have ever done." The scandal ended, but the punishment remained. And perhaps that is the cruelest detail of the entire story. The portrait did not destroy only one reputation. It taught a lesson. It showed what happens when a woman escapes the role assigned to her. And it made clear that, in that world, art was not just beauty. It was judgment. Time did what Parisian society never managed to do. It cooled the scandal without erasing what it revealed. Today, Madame X is not hidden. It is not turned toward the wall. It is not protected by social silence. It is in a museum, lit, framed, observed. The same portrait once treated as a moral threat is now studied as an artistic landmark. Not because society became fairer, but because the punishment already fulfilled its role. Virginie Gautreau did not live long enough to see this symbolic rehabilitation. Her reputation was never officially restored. Her name remained absent from the painting for decades. She paid the full price for a scandal she did not create alone. Sargent, on the other hand, survived. He rebuilt his career, gained prestige, entered the history of art, but he never again painted with the same risk, with the same tension, with the same exposed blade. The portrait defeated time, but it did so alone. And perhaps that is the most uncomfortable truth of this story. Madame X did not destroy a life by showing too much. It destroyed a life by showing exactly what was already there: a real woman, married, visible, comfortable in her own body, without mythology to protect her, without allegory to excuse her. In the end, the painting is not about scandal. It is about control, about who is allowed to be seen, about who is allowed to desire, about who pays when those rules are broken. Now, the question is no longer about the past. It is about you. When you look at Madame X, do you see a provocative woman or a society in panic? Because the portrait remains the same. So does the judgment. The only thing that changes is who is looking. If you made it this far, it means that gaze did not make you turn away. So do this. Leave a like, subscribe to Behind the Frame, turn on notifications. Because every week we open files that museums would rather keep closed, scandals, silences, and artworks that still watch those who dare to face them. Official History always looks clean. The real one almost never is. See you in the next case.